Denise Carter went to Greenwood Mall to shop. The staff thought she was simply another black woman with a large purse, so they could easily accuse her. Miller and Davis, the security guards, moved closer together, steps heavy with power, ready to trap her. Officer James Raines came next, loud, arrogant, and the law that enforces terror. But none of them could see the fire behind her serene gaze. 20 years of service and a captain's badge achieved through hard work and determination. They believed she would give up without a fight. They were wrong, and at one point, pride would pay the price. Before we move on, please tell us where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's tale. The skylights at Greenwood Mall let in bright sunlight on Saturday afternoons, making the polished floors shine. Captain Denise Carter moved with determination, and her leather purse swung gracefully by her side. She had a hard week of paperwork and meetings with staff, so buying her niece's birthday present was a nice change of pace. Something special for Jasmine, she said to herself as she looked at the stores. There were a lot of people at the mall on the weekend, including families with strollers and teens hanging out near the fountain. Denise let herself relax and put work out of her mind. It just took 8 minutes for that calm feeling to go away. She saw them in the reflection of a store window. 2 security personnel keeping what they undoubtedly thought was a low profile. The taller one, who had a name tag that said Miller, talked on his radio while looking right at her. Davis, the shorter guard, kept staring back and forth between her and his companion, looking uneasy. Denise's jaw got tight. She had been on the force for 20 years and could recognize surveillance from a mile away. She had already been followed in stores. It wasn't new, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Miller's words echoed down the hall. Copy that. Black woman, brown leather bag, blue sweater, keeping an eye on. Denise's fingers turned into fists. She felt a strong urge to turn around and face them. She could show them her badge and watch their faces drop and make them squirm. But no, she went shopping for her niece on her day off. She wouldn't allow them mess this up. She took a deep breath and walked into Crystal's store, a store that sells expensive jewelry and accessories. There was a lovely jazz song playing in the background and the smell of vanilla perfume in the air. A middle-aged Caucasian woman with a sharp blazer stood behind the counter. According to her name badge, Linda stiffened up. Can I help you? Linda's smile didn't reach her eyes, and her tone was caustic. Thanks, I'm just looking. Denise's voice stayed calm and nice, even though her heart was racing. She walked over to a display of delicate charm bracelets, which were just the kind Jasmine had been talking about for months. Denise could see Linda watching her in the mirror behind the counter through the glass. Miller and Davis stood outside the store entrance, pretending to look at a directory map. Linda said loudly, "These are all locked cases," as she appeared at Denise's elbow. IT can only be taken off by staff. I understand, Denise said, still looking at the wristbands. I'll let you know when I'm ready to see something. Linda didn't leave. Instead, she moved closer, and her eyes moved back and forth between Denise and her purse. Denise had saved up for 3 months to buy the leather bag, but now it felt like it was burning on her side. Actually, Denise remarked, standing up straight, I'd like to see that silver bracelet with the butterfly charm. Linda thought about it for a moment before carefully reaching for her keys. Denise's hands shook a little when she opened the case. It was clear that the manager was worried, as if she thought Denise would take the whole tray and run. The bracelet was lovely, with thin links that caught the light, little crystals that shine on the wings of the butterfly. Denise smiled as she thought of how happy Jasmine would be when she opened it. I'll take, she said at first. Linda cut her off quickly, saying, Excuse me, I need to see inside your bag. The store got quiet. The jazz music even seemed to drift away. Denise felt the heat rise up her neck as other shoppers looked at her. Sorry. She kept her voice low and calm. This case is missing a piece of jewelry. Linda's voice got louder and more sure of itself as Miller and Davis walked into the business. I saw you put something in your purse. Denise's hands started to shake, But not because she was scared. She was angry. That's not true at all. I haven't touched anything else besides the bracelet you just showed me. Please cooperate, ma'am. Miller stepped forward, his hand on his radio. Put your bag on the counter. Denise stood up straight and felt the usual weight of authority sink over her shoulders. No, I won't. You have no right to search my personal property without a good reason, and I haven't taken anything. Davis moved anxiously behind his partner. Linda's face was red, but she kept going. If you don't show us what's in the bag, we'll phone the cops. Denise said firmly, This is harassment. Since I got to this mall, you've been following me. You're going after me because I'm black, and I won't let you humiliate me. Miller got closer, trying to scare her with his size. Last chance. You need to open the bag, or things will get hard. Denise kept her ground, her emotions racing, but her voice calm. I'm not going to open anything. You don't have the right, the probable cause, or the proof. Back off, that's all. Miller picked up his radio. Crystal's store has a code 10. The subject won't listen and is asking for police help. Others were waiting at the entrance with their phones up. Linda rubbed her hands together, appearing less sure now that things were becoming worse. Davis kept looking toward the exits as if he was thinking about leaving, but Denise didn't move. She had stood up to armed criminals and dishonest police. She wouldn't let mall security or a racist store manager push her around. Her handbag stayed firmly at her side, and she kept her eyes on Miller's. She remarked in a low voice, "You're making a very big mistake." As they waited for help to arrive, the tension between them crackled. Neither side was eager to give in. Crystal's store became more tense as Denise kept her cool, even if her wrath was about to boil out. "Before you keep making these false charges," she replied calmly to Linda, "let's look at your security cameras. They'll prove that I didn't take anything." Linda's confidence wavered for a second. "The cameras?" Denise pointed to the visible black dome in the ceiling corner. "And there, and there. So, let's watch the footage together." Miller didn't wait for Linda's response. He grabbed Denise's right arm, his fingers digging into her skin. Davis, looking increasingly uncomfortable, took her left arm with a gentler grip. "You've been warned," Miller growled. "Now you're interfering with security operations." Denise's police training kicked in. She could have broken their holds in seconds, but that would only escalate things. Instead, she kept her voice steady and loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "I am calmly requesting to view security footage that would prove my innocence." That's not interference. That's a reasonable solution. The boutique's entrance suddenly darkened as a broad-shouldered figure pushed through the onlookers. Officer James Raines strutted in, his badge gleaming, his face twisted in what seemed like anticipation rather than concern. Denise knew Raines by reputation. The complaints about him regularly crossed her desk. Aggressive arrests, excessive force, particularly targeting black shoppers. He'd somehow avoided serious consequences, protected by connections in the department. "What do we got here?" Raines boomed, making a show of surveying the scene. His hand rested casually on his weapon. "A deliberate intimidation tactic." Linda rushed to explain. "She won't let us check her bag for stolen. Another one causing trouble." Raines cut her off, focusing his hostile gaze on Denise. "Always the same story, isn't it?" "Officer," Denise began, maintaining her professional tone. "This is a misunderstanding that could be easily resolved by—" Without warning, Raines grabbed her shoulder and slammed her against the boutique's glass wall. The impact rattled the display cases inside, and several shoppers gasped. The glass was cold against her cheek as Raines pressed her harder against it. "Don't tell me how to do my job," he snarled close to her ear. "Hands behind your back now. This is excessive force," Denise declared loudly, still keeping her voice controlled despite the rage and humiliation burning in her chest. "I have rights, and you are violating them." "Rights?" Raines laughed, yanking her arms back roughly. "You've got the right to shut up, while I add resisting arrest to your charges." The handcuffs clicked shut unnecessarily tight. Around them, the crowd had grown larger. Phones were out everywhere recording the scene. Some people whispered in disgust. Others called out that this wasn't right, but no one intervened. Rains spun her around and started marching her toward the mall corridor. Each step was a study in controlled fury for Denise. She'd spent her career fighting against exactly this kind of abuse of power, and now here she was experiencing it firsthand. The mall's main corridor had come to a standstill. Shoppers pressed against storefronts, phones raised high to capture the spectacle of a well-dressed black woman being paraded out in handcuffs. Denise held her head high even as her shoulders screamed from the awkward angle of her arms. "You're making a scene for nothing," Rains announced loudly, playing to his audience. Should have just cooperated. They reached the mall's side exit, where Rains's patrol car waited. The afternoon sun was harsh after the mall's filtered light, and Denise had to blink several times to adjust her vision. "Before this goes any further," she said clearly, turning to face the growing crowd of onlookers, "I think you should know something, Officer Rains." "Save it for booking," he snapped, reaching for the car door. "I'm Captain Denise Carter, 15th Precinct." Her voice carried across the parking lot. "My badge is in my front pocket, which you would have known if you'd bothered to ask for identification before assaulting me." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Several people moved closer, phones still recording. Rain's face flickered with uncertainty before hardening into a sneer. "Sure you are," he scoffed. But there was a new edge of nervousness in his voice. "And I'm the police commissioner." "Check my pocket," Denise insisted. "Left side." Rains hesitated, then roughly patted her pocket. His hand froze as it encountered the familiar shape of a police badge. Slowly, he withdrew it, the gold shield catching the sunlight. "This is fake," he declared, but his voice had lost its authority. "Another charge? Impersonating an officer." The crowd's reaction was immediate. "She's a captain," someone called out. "He arrested a police captain for shopping," another voice added. The phones kept recording, documenting every second of Rains's increasingly obvious discomfort. "I suggest you remove these handcuffs," Denise said quietly. "Before you dig yourself any deeper, officer, this badge could be fake," Rains insisted. But his hands were shaking slightly. "I'm taking you in for verification and adding charges." For what?" Denise challenged, keeping her voice steady despite her mounting anger. "Shopping while black. Is that still your standard procedure, Officer Rains?" More phones appeared in the crowd. Someone was live-streaming. Rains's face had turned an ugly shade of red as he realized how badly he'd miscalculated. But instead of backing down, he grabbed Denise's arm again, trying to force her into the patrol car. "You're just making it worse for yourself," he growled. Fake badge, resisting arrest, interfering with an officer. The crowd's volume increased, their outrage palpable. Denise stood her ground, even in handcuffs, her voice carrying clearly over the growing chaos. "Every second of this is being recorded. Officer, every abuse of power, every violation of protocol. Are you sure you want to continue?" The crowd's anger swelled like a wave, their voices rising in unified protest. "Let her go," someone shouted from the back. Others took up the call, and soon dozens of people were chanting, their phones held high like torches in the fading afternoon light. Rains shifted uncomfortably, still gripping Denise's arm, but clearly unsure how to proceed. His usual tactics of intimidation were backfiring spectacularly as more mall visitors stopped to join the growing assembly. "This is going viral," a teenage girl announced loudly, her eyes on her phone screen. "Already got 1,000 shares on TikTok. Do you all see this? They took a black police commander into custody for shopping." Denise stayed very still, and even though the shackles hurt, her posture was straight. In her 20 years of service, she had to cope with a lot of fights. But being on this side of the cuffs gave her a different point of view that hurt deep in her chest. A mall security supervisor ran out, his face red with fear. A woman in a sharp business suit stood behind him, holding her phone and spoke quickly into it. The boss looked around. The audience was screaming. The police captain was in handcuffs, and Officer Rains was getting more and more upset. His face grew pale. The woman in the suit, who said she was Patricia Wells, the mall's PR director, said that internal affairs was on its way. "Officer, maybe we should take this inside." Denise said firmly, "There's nothing to move inside. It's time to take these handcuffs off." There were more phones in the crowd. There were more live feeds. There were a lot of comments and shares on social media. No one could stop the story from spreading. "Check out these numbers," someone yelled. 20,000 views already. Patricia Wells moved closer, her professional grin strained. "Officer Raines, given the circumstances, maybe we should." "I don't take orders from mall management," Raines said, but he was starting to lose his nerve. Even though the weather was chilly, sweat dripped down his forehead. A police car with flashing lights but no siren pulled into the parking lot. Sergeant Robert Watkins came outside and looked at the situation with a carefully neutral face. He had worked with Denise for a long time and knew that she was honest. "Officer Raines," Watkins said, his voice sounding casual, yet not. "Want to tell me why you've got a police captain in cuffs?" Raines' grip on Denise's arm eventually relaxed. "Sergeant, I was responding to a theft call. This woman claimed to be a captain, but that's Captain Carter," Watkins interrupted. "Your commanding officer's commanding officer. The badge you're holding. It's real. I suggest you verify that fact quickly." The crowd had gone quiet, watching the drama unfold. Raines' face worked through a series of emotions: anger, fear, calculation. Finally, with shaking hands, he produced his keys and removed the handcuffs. Denise rubbed her wrists, noting the red marks where the metal had dug into her skin. She'd have bruises tomorrow. Evidence of yet another routine encounter gone wrong. Patricia Wells stepped forward, speaking loudly enough for the crowd's phones to pick up every word. "Captain Carter, on behalf of Greenwood Mall, I want to extend our sincerest apologies for this unfortunate incident. We pride ourselves on being a welcoming space for all shoppers, and clearly we failed you today." "Unfortunate incident," Denise repeated, her voice sharp. "Is that what we're calling racial profiling and police brutality now?" The PR director flinched. More phones recorded her discomfort. "We will be conducting a full investigation," Wells continued, her professional veneer cracking slightly. "Our security protocols will be thoroughly reviewed." "And save it," Denise cut her off. "Your security cameras caught everything. I suggest you preserve that footage." The crowd murmured approvingly. Several people called out their support, offering to send their videos as evidence. While the mall's PR team tried to manage the growing crisis, Sergeant Watkins moved closer to Denise, speaking in a low voice. "You should know, Raines was on his radio before I got here." "Let me guess," Denise replied quietly. Writing his version of events, Watkins nodded grimly. "He's already claiming you resisted and struck him during the arrest. You know how these reports work. First version on paper becomes the official narrative." Denise felt a fresh wave of anger, but kept her expression neutral. She'd seen this pattern before. False reports used to justify excessive force, especially against black citizens who dared to stand up for their rights. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with," she told Watkins. The crowd finally began to disperse as mall management worked to restore normal operations. Denise collected her belongings, including her badge, which Raines had dropped on the ground, before quickly leaving the scene. The drive home felt surreal. The familiar streets of her neighborhood looked the same, but everything had changed. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel, but her mind raced through the implications of what had happened. Walking into her house, Denise headed straight for her home office. She needed to document everything while it was fresh in her memory. The laptop powered on with a soft hum. Her email notification pinged. New message from the department. Subject line: Incident report 2T12347. Denise opened the attachment, her jaw tightening as she read. According to Raines's report, she had been combative and aggressive from the start. He claimed she had struck out at officers and resisted legitimate security protocols. The report painted a picture of an angry black woman out of control. The exact stereotype she'd fought against her entire career. She sat back in her chair, the accusations burning on her screen. The email had been copied to Internal Affairs, the chief's office, and the police union. Raines had moved fast, trying to control the narrative. The kitchen clock showed 7:30 p.m. when Carla Johnson arrived, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the concerned expression Denise had come to know well over their 15 years of friendship. As a defense attorney, Carla had seen enough cases to recognize when trouble was brewing. "I ordered Chinese," Denise said, gesturing to the takeout containers on the dining room table. "Figured we'd need fuel for this conversation." Carla sat down her bag and pulled out a manila folder. "I reviewed the report you sent. It's worse than I thought, Denise." They settled at the table, the familiar comfort of their usual dinner routine now overshadowed by the day's events. Denise served the food while Carla poured the wine, both women falling into a practiced rhythm that spoke of years of friendship and shared battles. "Tell me straight," Denise said, pushing her sweet and sour chicken around the plate. "How bad is it?" Carla asked after taking a slow drink of wine. "The report is crafted perfectly to trigger an IIA investigation. Raines knows exactly what he's doing. He's claiming you struck him during the arrest. That's assault on an officer. He's painted you as hostile, aggressive, uncooperative, and he's got those mall security guards backing his story." "But there are videos," Denise protested. "Dozens of witnesses saw what really happened. Videos can help, but you know how the department works. They'll say the footage is incomplete, that it doesn't show the whole story. They'll focus on your attitude." Carla opened the manila folder she had brought and spread out a few papers on the table. "I have represented 6 clients in the last year. All of them were black and were detained at or near the mall. All of them were charged with resisting arrest or attacking police. All of this happened after they complained about being harassed." Denise leaned over the paperwork, and her police experience kicked in as she looked over the information. "The same officers are participating. Most of them have Raines in them. And check out the pattern. The complaints always come before the accusations. It's like they're exploiting the threat of prosecution to suppress people." Denise felt a shiver travel down her back. The effects were huge. How many cases are we talking about? These are the only ones that came to mind. How many people do you believe agreed to plea deals because they couldn't afford to fight? How many stayed quiet because they were afraid? The talk went on until late at night. Both women were going over the minutiae, looking for trends, and putting together a wider picture. The clock in the kitchen said it was almost midnight when Carla left, but she couldn't fall asleep. Denise sat in her dark living room and looked at social media on her laptop, which threw a blue light on her face. There were a lot of footage of her arrest on the internet. Some comments were angry and called for justice. Some others said racist things about her, saying she had used the racial card or gotten what she deserved. A news outlet had picked up the tale. Black police officer arrested while shopping. Racial profiling or a valid stop. There were a lot of different stories in the comments area. The phone on the coffee table buzzed. A number that is not known. The message made her sit up straighter. "Captain, back off! You don't know what you're getting yourself into." Denise looked at the screen, and her police background made her notice things without thinking. Area code for the area. Text transmitted through a regular carrier, not a messaging app. The warning was clear, but it was worded carefully. Nothing that is clearly against the law. She took a picture of the time and date. One more piece of evidence for whatever was coming. The phone's glimmer highlighted her face in the dark room, underlining the determination in her expression. They hoped they could intimidate her into not talking. They had no idea who they were up against. When Denise got at Carla's workplace at 8:01 a.m., the sun was shining through the windows. Sharp. The law office was quiet because most of the personnel wouldn't be there for another hour. That's why they had planned to meet so early. "I've been up all night going over cases," Carla remarked. Her desk was covered in piles of manila folders. There were dark circles under her eyes that resembled Denise's own tired look. "What I found? It's bigger than we thought." Denise settled into the chair across from her friend, clutching a travel mug of much-needed coffee. "Show me." Carla spread out dozens of case files, creating a grid of paper across her large desk. Each of these is a false arrest report from the past year. All black residents. Most of them happened at or near Greenwood Mall. How many? 47 cases that I can confirm, but these are just the ones where people fought back or sought legal help. For every person who challenges the charges, there are probably 5 who can't afford to. Denise leaned forward, scanning the documents. Her trained eye caught patterns immediately. Same officers showing up repeatedly. Raines, Martinez, Cooper. And look at the charges. Carla tapped several files. Resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, disorderly conduct. All charges that pit the citizen's word against the officers, making it nearly impossible to fight in court, Denise added, her jaw tightening. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Carla pulled out a spreadsheet she'd compiled. Of these cases, 86% end in guilty pleas. Most defendants accept deals rather than risk trial. That's way above normal plea rates, Denise noted, her investigators' instincts firing up. And every single plea deal includes mandatory probation. Carla's voice took on an edge. Specifically, probation through a private contractor called New Horizon Supervision Services. Denise's eyebrows rose. Private probation? I didn't even know that was legal. It's a growing trend. Counties outsource probation monitoring to save money. But look at the fees these people are charged. Carla handed over another document. Monthly supervision fees, drug testing fees, electronic monitoring fees. Some people end up paying thousands of dollars over their probation period, creating a whole new debtor's prison system, Denise muttered, anger building in her chest. And if they can't pay, they break their probation. Then they go back to jail and have to pay more fees. It's a never-ending cycle. Denise got up because she couldn't stay still. I need to look at our records on this. There has to be a record of this at the precinct. Carla told them to be careful. I'm still a police captain after the threat last night. I have the right to look at arrest records. Denise picked up her things. They can't stop me from doing what I do. Denise sat at her desk in the precinct an hour later, painstakingly pulling up computerized documents. She saw other officers looking at her out of the corner of their eyes and heard them whispering when she walked by. The fake arrest report had evidently been shared. She didn't pay attention to them and instead looked at her computer screen. She looked for patterns in years' worth of arrest statistics that scrolled by. Place, Greenwood Mall. Officer Raines is charged with resisting arrest. The numbers kept becoming bigger. Then she saw something that made her stop. A note concerning the department working with New Horizon Supervision Services. Richard Greenwood, the CEO of the corporation, was also the owner of the mall. She found financial papers as she looked deeper. Greenwood Holdings, LLC, owned the probation company as a subsidiary. The mall security company was also a subsidiary. Everything was linked. Her phone rang. Carla sent a text. Found something different. These cases go up every 3 months shortly before the mall tells its stockholders how much money it made. Denise's mind was racing. More arrests meant that more people were on probation. Collecting more fees was easier with more people on probation. The mall's security was after black customers. The police in the area arrested people on spurious charges. The Greenwood family made money from the probation payments that came after that. She printed out important papers and put them in her briefcase. As she left, she heard more whispers and climbed more stairs. Let them speak. Now she had bigger problems. Denise parked across from Greenwood Mall in the afternoon light, which was very bright. The glass front of the building shone, giving the impression of a successful high-end store. She had thought of it as the place where she was embarrassed yesterday. Now she saw it in a new light. She saw people arriving and going from the store. There are security guards at every entrance to the mall, and they all have radios. A young black woman hurried past, holding her handbag close and looking around fearfully. A guard was following a teenage boy, exactly like she had been. She realized how big it was all at once. How long had this been going on? How many lives had been ruined by false accusations? How many households had to pay a lot of money for probation? All to make the Greenwood family more money. Denise's knuckles were white as she grasped the driving wheel. She had witnessed a lot of corruption and systemic racism in her 20 years as a police officer. But this was not the same. This was planned and organized abuse. She looked at the mall's huge entryway, where she had been carried out in handcuffs just the day before. In the quiet car, her voice was barely a whisper. This wasn't just for me. Denise had just sat down at her desk with a stack of papers when someone knocked on the door and broke her train of thinking. A young Latina woman stood in the doorway of her office with a notebook in her hand. "Hi, Captain Carter. I'm Maya Lopez from the City Herald." She moved forward with purpose, her press credential hanging from a lanyard. "Do you have a minute?" Denise was about to deliver her usual no-comment answer when she saw something in Maya's determined face that made her stop. "Shut the door." Maya sat down and started recording with her phone. "I've been keeping an eye on your case since the mall incident, but that's not why I'm here. I've been looking into Officer Raines and his ties to private probation companies for 6 months." Denise leaned back and looked at the reporter. "What have you learned? Money trails, fake businesses, and arrests that happen at strange times." Maya was able to get documents on her tablet, but I couldn't. Sources stop talking. Records go missing. I saw the video of what happened to you, and I realized this was my chance. What chance do you have to finally show this? Maya's eyes were full of conviction. I have bank records that show huge transfers from New Horizons to offshore accounts and tax documents that don't make sense. But I need someone on the inside to assist me put the pieces together. Denise thought about it a lot. Maya's intensity reminded her of herself 20 years ago, even if journalists might be friends or foes. "What do you think about this story?" "The truth. How a racist cop and a big business are ruining black lives for money." Maya moved forward. "I saw my immigrant parents were harassed by the police and targeted by shady businesses when I was a kid. This isn't just a story for me." Denise nodded after a long time. "I can't be your official source, but I might know people who can assist you find out where the money is going."